right. We are here for high school planning with HomeLife Academy. Are y'all in the right spot? Okay. I taught college for 17 years, and sometimes on the first day it was hilarious because I would get to the end of the first day of class and someone would be like, "This isn't sociology?" I'd be like, "No, this is psychology." And they would like be, "I sat in the wrong class for 50 minutes. So, but if any of you are particularly interested in high school homeschooling for struggling learners, particularly interested in the modified path, that is actually upstairs. So I just want to give you, let you know that this is going to be more focused on the other paths. I'm just going to mention the modified. But Phyllis Lara is upstairs, and she's going to get into all the details of that. So y'all doing okay this morning? Okay, all right. How many folks are new to homeschooling? Okay, all right, good. How many are new to high school homeschooling? Okay, yeah. And it's a little different, isn't it? So that's what we're going to dig into today. I guess I should tell you who I am. My name is Diane Benson. I am the Director of Academics and Counseling with HomeLife Academy. I've been with HomeLife Academy about 6 years. Prior to that, I did teach at a community college for about 17 years. And then some of these overlap because otherwise you'll think I'm really old, and I'm just going to say I'm not. And then I've also have a degree in industrial organizational psychology and have done business consulting and worked in human resources management as well. So I get to kind of bring all of those different aspects together for homeschooling and looking at what makes kids successful because I've seen that in the workplace and I've seen that in college as well. So kind of bring those perspectives here. How many people kind of like, are you nervous? Does high school just seem intimidating to folks? Yes, yeah. So many times, even if you're not new to homeschooling, so maybe you've homeschooled for quite a few years, all of a sudden high school looms, and there's just something intimidating about it. I think all of a sudden we're thinking, but there's credits involved, and there's gonna be a transcript at the end showing what I've done. And, potential employers or colleges or the military may be looking at this. So all of a sudden we feel like in a different way it counts and it matters. And maybe all of a sudden, all that fun that we had in the early years, sometimes we're like, okay, kid, the fun's over. It's time for high school. And so some of the things I'm going to touch base on today is that, one, you can still have fun in high school. Okay, I mean, there is still that goal of creating in your child the joy of learning. There is that goal of creating an adult who knows how to learn for themselves. Because I think if there's anything that we all, as parents have learned in the past few years is that things change, right? And we don't really know what tomorrow's tomorrow is going to look like for our children. So it's harder, and sometimes that feels scary too. I want them to be successful, but I don't even know what the world's going to look like, in another 10 years. So one of the key things is to make sure that your student knows how to learn, because that is the most important skill as you go through there. The other good thing that HomeLife Academy is going to offer you as you come into high school is we're going to provide the tools for you to make it easier as the parent of a high school student to do this, okay? Our website is full of important and good information. It gives you tips, it gives you potential course titles, it gives you ideas, all of that. So our website is a great resource for you as you look into how you're going to do high school. The other thing is the planning sheets for high school that I'm going to go over in just a minute. They're another tool that is going to walk you through this. And then you've got us. You've got the HomeLife Academy counseling team who is going to be there when you need us, and we're going to be able to walk with you through this process of educating your child through high school. And HomeLife Academy, we've been around 20 years, And I think one of the advantages of home life is we've seen, I don't want to say we've seen it all, but it feels like it sometimes, you know? I mean, we have seen and we have worked with families whose students will go to Ivy League schools and have been accepted into Ivy League schools, to students who've been entrepreneurs, gone on the mission field, gone into the trades, all sorts of things. So we kind of know, when you come to a home life counselor, you have somebody who's been that way before. You know what I mean? And they're gonna be interested in what are the goals of your student, and let's talk about what it takes to get to that goal. So, I guess I just kind of encourage you here at the beginning is to know that you're not in this alone. When you've got Home Life Academy, I sound like an advertisement, but really, you have got counselors who've seen the big picture. The other thing is, because Home Life Academy has students not just in Tennessee, we have students all over the country and globally. Lots of times we know what's coming in education. We will be aware of the trends and be able to kind of give you some information on those as well if you think that they're going to be helpful. So high school is a little different, but you don't have to give up all your flexibility. Yes, there are different hoops, I guess you'd say, that you have to jump through. And really, depending on your students' goals, you know, some goals require more hoop jumping, right, than other goals. And that's okay. The other thing that I think is intimidating about high school, and maybe you'll just have to nod or raise your hand if this is you, is like all of a sudden this little kid that you've been raising, and maybe you've been teaching how to think and how to express themselves, they're thinking and expressing themselves, right? I mean, they have ideas. And so the other thing that I encourage, besides using all the resources that are available to you at Home Life Academy, is that you include your student. Start talking to them more as well when you get into high school. One of the things I would do with my son is kind of say, you know, here's a list of books that I am interested in you reading as part of your English curriculum. And I would always put in more, you know, and it's like, let's go through, out of these, which ones do you want to read? You know, and here's a couple of curriculum ideas, or a co-op or tutorial class. Read the description. You know, I would let him have an opinion and a thought. And you know what that gave is buy-in. So then it wasn't fighting as much, because it was kind of like, oh yeah, he helped make that decision. So he was also invested in making that decision work and caring a little bit more about what his opportunities were. The other thing is, how many folks have this idea of what your child is going to do and who they're going to be? You know, anybody? Yeah, I thought when I had my son, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a soccer mom, because I just thought that sounded cool, you know, and my kid is not interested in organized sports, and he instead wanted to hike and whitewater raft. And I'm like, that is so outside my comfort zone. But I got to go along with that, you know, and I got to learn that way too. So one of the things that, especially as our kids get older, we have to let go of what our ideas and our plans for them, and kind of look at who they are and who or how God made them, and be willing to kind of let some of that go and let them be the person that they're going to be. So let me from there, let's kind of start getting into the nitty gritty. So the first thing I want to look at or talk about is, what is a credit? Because isn't that all of a sudden, there's credits, this counts. What are we looking at? So there we go. So a credit this is how we start. So one credit is roughly 150 hours of study, okay? Or if you're using a curriculum that says 1 credit, so let's say you're using an Algebra 1 curriculum and it says it's 1 credit. If that curriculum is a credit, you give them that credit when they finish the curriculum, okay? And that can be, you know, if you're doing a block type schedule, maybe they do the whole curriculum in 1 semester and they get their 1 credit in the fall. If you do it all year, you give them a 0.5 credit in the fall and then a 0.5 credit in the spring. And it is also okay to spread it out even more than that. Sometimes I'll know parents who'll say, oh, we just got behind, so I'm going to go, 0.5, 0.25, 0.25, and finish it up during the summer, or maybe even into the next fall. Okay, so there's a lot of flexibility there. But typically 150 hours, if you're not using a curriculum, that's the number of hours that's typical for a credit. And if you are using a curriculum, you look at what the curriculum provider says, how much this is worth. Some curriculum providers will say, this is a semester class. Semester classes are typically a half a credit, okay? And other half a credit, more specifically, is roughly 75 hours, okay? And that's really good to know, especially for electives, because, that stuff that they're just doing to follow their passions and their interests, maybe they're playing music, et cetera, you can just kind of, you don't have to sit there and run around with a stopwatch and say, 20 minutes today, an hour and 15, let's add it all up, and what's the total? You kind of get an idea, right? If you're doing something, for an hour or so, several times a week, throughout the school year, you're probably going to earn a credit. So you don't have to get too upset and too worried about that. Now, what do we require, to graduate with HomeLife Academy? With HomeLife Academy, I've got our requirements up there. You're going to need 4 English credits. I'm going to go over these in more detail in a moment. You're going to need 4 math credits. You're going to need 3 science credits, a U.S. history, 2 social studies, 1 U.S. history, half a credit personal finance, half a credit health and wellness, 1 credit PE, and then 6 electives. So to graduate and get a diploma with HomeLife Academy, you need 22 credits. And our diploma is valid and good. These are the credits needed to graduate with HomeLife Academy. In Tennessee, you don't have to kind of worry but what is the state requiring? Because we are a school, this is approved, and this is the 22 credits that you need to have with HomeLife Academy. All right? So again, maybe that sounds like a lot, but you start kind of then looking at it. How does it actually play out? How does this work? How do I determine which 4 English? And what that depends a lot on is which path your student is going to take. The big advantage, I think, of HomeLife Academy is that we have 1 diploma with multiple paths. And just as I had mentioned earlier, if your student is like college-bound, Ivy League, or wants to be a nurse or something that requires specific education, you can tailor high school to help them be prepared for that. If they want to start their own business, maybe they don't need to take pre-calc, and maybe they don't need to spend 4 years on literary analysis. Maybe they need to learn business writing and business communication as part of their English. So this idea with 1 diploma, multiple paths means that last slide that I showed that said all the credits that you need, those are the same no matter what path you take. And I feel like I need to just mention with the paths, it's not in stone. Okay, your child can change paths. It does not go on their diploma. It doesn't. Really, the only reason that we ask you to pick a path is so that we as counselors can provide you with the best recommendations. Okay, so if, for example, if you say your child is NCAA, wants to play sports at a college, there's more hoops. They're more particular. So if you have that as your child's path, I'm going to say, this looks great, but if you really want to get approved for NCAA, here's some things to consider. If you're going to college, lots of colleges require a foreign language. So if you say you're College 4, I might mention that. If you say you're a different path, it's up to you. You can still get a diploma with HomeLife Academy. Our diploma does not say what type of path you're on. It's just for us to give you best advice, because you know your student. You know them better than anybody. And we're communicating with you, and the more that we know about your student and who they are and what their goals are, the better able we are to help them. So HomeLife is flexible. with this goal-based planning. We have 4 paths for you to choose from, and we also have a certificate of completion for students who who need to show that they're not truant and they are, being educated as well. All right? So we're going to start getting now specifically into what these 4 paths are and how you use them. And they're a tool. They're a tool just like our planning sheets, just like talking to a counselor. And I cannot tell you how many parents I've talked to who, my kid's not going to college, my kid's not going to college, my kid's not going to college. They call me February of the kid's senior year. Guess what? They want to go. We're able to kind of help them navigate that. And then I also have parents who are like, my kid is going to college. And then they're also, we get baffled when we get thrown a loop, right? It's like, we've been planning for your college all these years, and now you want to start a business, and not go straight to college? I mean, there's flexibility, and it has to happen on all our paths, because ultimately our children are becoming their own person, whether we like it or not, as they get older. So something to keep in mind. So let's go ahead now and start looking at these paths. We do have the NCC athletics path, and this is for students who want to play college sports or meet the eligibility for NCC athletic scholarships. And I'll tell you, it's a lot more precise in what they want to see. And in order to be eligible for NCAA with a college, they're going to see, did your child, I always say jumping through hoops. There's some specific things they want to see, specific types of curriculum or learning or way things are presented in specific classes. So if you think that's a possibility, you kind of want to jump on that, with your student. HomeLife Academy actually has a counselor who is, actually she was NCAA when she was in school, and now she works with athletes, and she is very familiar with what they will accept and what they will not, and how to work through that process. The next is the College 4 path for students who want to go straight to a 4-year university. Okay. And then we have the College 2 TM, which is trade and military path. And this is for students who want to attend like a community college, a 2-year college, maybe a trade school, or enlist in the military. And then we also have the life choice path. And this is for students who want to graduate with career technical plan, and they're not going to go to any post-secondary education. They're the ones who are learning on their own and maybe starting businesses, and they've got a lot going on, and they're ready to jump out into the world. And sometimes they've already made that jump in high school. I mean, sometimes I'm looking at transcripts for high school students, and they're running businesses and making things and, building buildings and all this type of stuff. So these are the main paths that you're going to look at when you're, looking at starting with your child in 9th grade. I typically recommend for 9th graders that you kind of do the College 4 path, because it's easier to back off that than to try to catch back up. And there's not really that much difference, especially for freshmen. So just something to consider. Other options we have is the modified path. And this is for students who want a standard diploma, but maybe for some reason there's certain courses that need to be modified. Maybe they can do all sorts of things, but not math. And so we're going to list everything as it is and maybe put modified math. They're doing a lower level math, they're doing math differently, and we're going to list that on the transcript. And then, of course, I mentioned the certificate of completion for students who want to avoid, they're not going to get a high school diploma, but they need to avoid truancy, and they're going to go this path just to record that they're learning, whether it's, at whatever level that is or however that looks like for that family. All right, so we've got these words. Let's make it easier, right? Yes, ma'am. It would be the College 2 TM. Yes, yeah, trade school would be there. And I'm doing a program later today that's going to talk a lot about that. But yes, great options and opportunities there. So this is one way we make it easier. We have these planning sheets that are available, and I'm going to go through and kind of show you the different ones. We have up here the College 4 path and the College 2 TM path. Again, this is all the same 22 credits, but our recommendations are going to be different for you depending on what you're telling us about your student. So you can see that there's the 4 English, the 4, you've got the math, you've got all the different categories listed, the total number of credits. This is a good thing to kind of do, like when you're starting out with a freshman or a 9th grader. Let's think about what these 4 years of high school are going to look like. You're probably going to want English every year, right? Yeah, you actually do need to have English every year. You're going to need 4 credits of math, so mostly there's math every year. You want to use these planning sheets and maybe even write out what they're going to do when. What electives will they maybe do freshman year? What will they maybe do senior year? When do you want to do health and personal finance? Because those only need to be done, once each for half a credit. The other thing is, when you're planning, do it in pencil, right? Because things change or you have new opportunities that come up and you're like, oh my goodness, I thought we were going to do this at home and now I see there's this wonderful tutorial or this great opportunity and we're going to do that instead. So you really do want to do these in pencil, but it's all listed out here to go through, okay? The next couple is the life choice path. And again, it's the same 22 credits, but our recommendations are going to vary. If you're on the life choice path, we're not going to say, I recommend necessarily, I recommend you do algebra, geometry, algebra 2, which we might recommend, for somebody going to a 4-year college and another higher level math. If you're life choice, you do need 4 credits of math, but there's more flexibility there. Maybe you're doing consumer math. Maybe you're doing bookkeeping or accounting. You're doing math that's going to make sense for what your child's goal is so that they're prepared for that, okay? And that's a great freedom, and it really helps students really buy into that more, okay? And then, again, the modified path, we've got some examples on how to title modified courses, all right? So these paths, sheets are available on our website. They are a great resource for planning and thinking through this. One thing that I typically recommend is, you could do about 6 credits a year, 5 or 6, and hit that 22 in 4 years, right? I usually recommend, and this is totally up to you because your kid, but that you go a little bit heavier in 9th grade. If they're, able, maybe you do, 8. And the reason why is when they get older, maybe they have part-time jobs, maybe they have a boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe they start to have, when they can drive, things change when they can drive, right? So they start to be their own little independent people, and, they might be doing other things more than just academics. And then the other thing that I found is just, depending on what they're going to do, if you get a lot of these core courses done earlier, when they're a junior, senior, you can maybe do more internships or job shadowing or work on writing essays and visiting colleges. It gives you more freedom there so they don't feel, as stressed out when they get to that point. All right, so let's go ahead and look specifically at these different categories. So we need 4 English courses, credits. What I typically recommend is, first of all, you need to do 1 a year. If you're college bound, you probably want to do some literary analysis because they are going to do that in college. Almost every freshman English class in college is going to require that. So you probably want to get them some exposure to that. Most colleges want to see a well-read student as far as literature. So if they're going to college, you're probably going to want some world lit somewhere in there. You might want some American lit, Brit lit, Latin American lit. You're kind of going to want to broaden what you do in those categories. High school English typically includes a literature or a reading component, and a composition or a writing component. And again, what those are depends on what your students' goals are. I typically call it English Lit in Comp 9, English Lit in Comp 10, English Lit Comp 11, and Lit Comp 12. And every year then in the resources in Apple Core, you would be listing how you are, how you are accomplishing that. And English is a fun one. I mean, there's curriculum. Some years I used curriculum with my son for English. Some years, and with English, sometimes it's like, sometimes you get one whole English curriculum. Sometimes I would get one literature curriculum and a different writing curriculum. Other years, we used a co-op or tutorial for English. As I mentioned earlier, one year I was like, you know what, here's books I want you to read. And as parents, there's all sorts of cheats for us that are free online. I mean, if I pick classics or something similar that's been out there for a while, I can, you know how Cliff Notes, you remember how they're bad if you were a student? They're good if you're the parent. Because even though I always thought I would read everything that my son read, he was too fast for me. It was just too much. So, but I could have discussions with him because I had went through the Cliff Notes, and I could ask him intelligent questions and even make writing assignments. So there are lots of ways to do English, whatever way that you're comfortable with. The other thing I like to say about English is that even if your child is not a big reader, right, and they don't like a lot of these classics, I think a good idea, whether they're going to college or not, is that they are what I always call culturally literate. And by that, I mean if somebody says, oh, that couple's just like Romeo and Juliet, your child should probably be familiar with Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Now, does it mean that they read like the whole classic one? There's also movies as literature. I mean, there's other ways, but they should, know those references in society. Like I always like to say, oh, when someone's like, oh, aren't they romantic? It's like Romeo and Juliet. I'm like, they both died at the end. I mean, yeah, you can call that romantic. I don't know, I don't. But so the idea is that students just get exposed to those things so that if there's a conversation, if there's a reference that most of the folks in our culture understand, it's good if they know what that is too, okay? And if they're not going to college for, again, there's a lot more opportunity for English, technical writing, creative writing, journalism. I always say, like, maybe they read books associated with what they're interested in doing for a living. Again, I do think you should read some traditional literature, but it's okay if that's not the bulk of what you're doing in English, if that is not who your kid is. Because the last thing that you want to do is drum the interest out of them, right? So sometimes I would, with my son, it's like, this is a stretch. It's not your thing, my thing maybe, but let's just get through this one so we can maybe understand or talk about why do some people like that, type of thing, or know what it's about. So you can do any type of reading, again, follow your child's interest, that kind of helps, or you can do, if you really, if you want to say, everybody should read these books, or I want you to read these books, I loved these books. Let's talk about them. You can do that as well. And writing, again, if you're not going to college, it doesn't have to be that daunting literary analysis. Literary analysis is kind of fun, but my son would be like, what? Why? What's the motivation? I don't know. The author told him to do it, That's what happened here. But, so if they're going to college, they may need to know some of that. Otherwise, maybe technical writing, how to write business memos, how to write a business plan, how to, maybe request a grant. There's all sorts of opportunities and ways you can write. One of the things I did for my son, his senior year, is his English. He was writing essays for scholarships and college admission and all that, and I'm like, I'm not going to assign him more than that. So that was his composition, was those things, because he was doing them anyway, and we were trying, he was doing them very well and learning, and we were proofreading them, so, lots of flexibility, but lots of opportunity to also really make sure that you get those basics. So, lots of ways to do this, and there's no wrong way. Using a curriculum sometimes you just need that break, and sometimes it's a good way to kind of discipline yourself and your child as well. But you can also expand beyond that. All right, next is math. Again, if you're college bound, we're probably going to suggest the traditional math. Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2, and then a higher level math. Most colleges do like to see 4 levels of math. Trig is typically just half a credit. Lots of times that's combined with another math, so it's like trig and pre-calc for a full credit. In math, sequence matters. Okay, so you really need to do, Algebra 1 before you do Algebra 2 and before you do pre-calc. There is some different philosophies about geometry, whether it should be before Algebra 1 or before Algebra 2 or after Algebra 2, and I can, talk to you about what the research indicates, what children do better. If they're struggling with math, they typically recommend after Algebra 1, you do geometry, because it's a different side of the brain, it's different thinking. If they're really excelling at Algebra 1, maybe you go straight to Algebra 2, and then do geometry after that. So we can talk about that. But if they're not going to college, again, maybe they use pre-algebra in high school and they can get credit for that. Maybe they do competency math, accounting, consumer math, business math, math for technology. I found some new curriculum, or not new, but it was new to me, curriculum out there for like math for technical trades, math for electricians that you can use in high school as well. So just kind of keep in mind that you still have a lot of flexibility here. And I'm just going to talk about math for just a second, because math was a struggle for us. And I don't know how many times there were tears relative to math, right? Lots of times it was me, because I was like, I don't know. And we tried all sorts of curriculum, and we tried tutors and we just tried everything. And, math was not my son's gift. And I so worried, because he's very academic in every other area. And I was like, what's going to happen with college? And sure enough, that was his lowest score on the ACT. But you know what? The other areas were so high. His comp ACT score was still good, and he got in the honors division at the college. So it's like all of those things that I had worried about and caused a lot of angst. Sometimes we also need to say, well, let's sit down and do this as best as we can together, but let's not spend all of our life focused on what you're not good at. I mean, how fun is that? What if I had you do something that you're terrible at day after day and said F, F, F? I may say, we're not the best at this. Let's work through it and do our best, see what we can learn. But let's also spend time on the gifts that you have and let you excel in those. So you don't want to ignore what the child is great at just to spend all the time talking about what they're not great at. So I hope that gives you some hope for math. I know a lot of people are very good at math. So, similar idea if it's a different area for your child. Now, next is science. A couple of things with science. Science and math are linked, especially as you get to higher level science, like chemistry. Usually you need to have some Algebra 1 before you get to chemistry, before you're doing physics. So you want to be mindful that math and science are connected, and make sure that your student has the math background that they need in order to do the science that you're asking them to do. If you're going to college, lots of times they like the traditional, I think biology is the big one. It's like, it's almost expected that every kid had biology in high school. For College 4, we recommend that they've had a lab. There's lots of different ways to do labs. But I always put it in the course title. So for my son, I said biology with lab, and listed that as part of the course title. So it was very clear that he did a lab for that. Chemistry, physics, some of these others are good sciences for college-bound kids. Here's the other thing I want to mention, though. Does every college-bound student want to go to Harvard or Yale? No. Okay? And is every college expecting the same things from their applicants that Harvard and Yale are? No. So one of the things I also did for my student who was college bound is I started going to college websites and seeing how strict they were. You know, like, could we do an agricultural science? Could we do horticulture? Did that matter to them? And did it matter to them which math courses the student had? And some of them were pretty specific. We like to see these. And some of them were like, 3 sciences, totally up to you. We don't care, type of thing. You know, so you still have some of that flexibility as well. And I think that's good to know. Same thing, we'll talk about foreign language in a minute. So some of the colleges that my son was looking at said, you know, we like our high school students that come to us to have 2 years of a foreign language. We really prefer that they have 3, you know? And so I could work with that. And some of them were like, we don't care, you know, depending on what your student was going to pursue and what type of college it is. So, you know, you can also start peeking around. Now, all the colleges I researched, because I'm a little bit of a nerd, he didn't go to any of them. He threw me a curveball at the end. But still, you know, as I researched them, most of them were pretty similar. The HLA requirements are, you know, if you follow the College 4 planning sheet, you're going to be in good shape at most colleges, all right? So something to keep in mind there. But again, if you're not going, environmental science, animal science, equine science, all sorts of opportunities for science. And if you're, how many people here are in Tennessee? Are we Tennessee folks? Yeah, we're Tennessee folks. I mean, this is a great place for science to be, you know, with the national parks. And a lot of them offer free programs. I mean, I found one, and this was, I don't even remember, it was some research place up in the Smokies. I don't think anybody hardly knew of it, but they offered a program where I think they're called, what are they called? TARDIS something, I don't know, little microscopic things in the water. And so we got to go, and there was just a few of us, and get the water, talk to the scientists. I mean, that was such a good learning opportunity. So anyway, there's lots of ways to do that around here, especially because science is, nature is all around us. Let's see, next. Got it, social studies. If you're college bound, well, first of all, everybody needs to take U.S. history. U.S. history is a requirement with HomeLife Academy, so you do need to take that. In addition to that, you need 2 other social studies credits. If you are college, you know, we might recommend a world history or European history. Some colleges do like to see the half a credit government and half a credit economics, okay? I found that everybody says that, and it is, you know, I don't know, it's like everybody's like, yeah, we'd like you to have those, but there's a lot of colleges who, when it really gets down to it, they're not looking that in depth, unless it's like a higher level, real prestigious type of college. So, so those are some of the ideas for folks who are college bound. And then if you're not college bound, I mean, there's psychology, there's sociology, there is philosophy, anthropology, civics, contemporary issues, current events, which, oh my goodness. I know sometimes when I have a parent, it's like, we haven't done enough school, especially back a few years ago when, like, you know, everything was going on. I'm like, has your child been watching the news? Have y'all been talking about that? I guarantee you've done enough for the half a credit at least of contemporary issues or current events. So some flexibility there depending on what your student is looking for. Sometimes with social studies, if it's really fun to tie that in with English. So for example, if you're doing American literature, it's kind of fun if you do that the same year you do U.S. history, right? Because there's a lot of overlap. If you're doing world literature, it's really fun and easy to tie that if you also do world history at the same time. One of the things I think that we do in school is that even in homeschooling, it's like and especially when you're thinking of credits, it's like there's this subject and this subject and this credit and this credit. But you know, in life, it's not that way. It is, they all blend together, right? Science influences history. History influences science, influences philosophy, influences psychology, influences what is being written about in literature. That's the world. Sometimes we segregate them out for ease of teaching them, but the more you can tie them together, the more it just all comes alive for the student. Like, oh man, this was going on in history, and look how the writing is, the authors are writing these different kind of books at that time, and how they were influenced by the time period that they were living in. Okay, so lots of opportunities to, again, make it fun. With social studies, also field trips. I know one year I got together with just a group of friends, and we created an Appalachian history. Each of us took a month. We planned a field trip to our kids, or for our kids. Contacted a professor at ETSU, because they have a really strong Appalachian Studies department. Told her I have about 20 kids in this group. And she said, bring them on. I'll talk to them for like half a day. And then she had her grad students come in. She had Appalachian music. I mean, people love to talk about what they love, right? So, and you want to kind of use that, because that's where you get, that's where the passion can be infectious when you look at that. PE is, you need 1 credit, roughly 150 hours. It can be anything. Okay, it does not have to be like, I don't know, calisthenics every day. I have kids who walk the dog for PE. I had a farm mom ask if her kid could bale hay for PE. And I'm like, yep, roughly 150 hours of it. So, however you want to do that. It can be hiking, it can be sports. If they're on a sports team, that can be PE. It's just some sort of physical activity, okay? So the electives. Again, if they're going to college, we have more specific recommendations. These are not requirements for graduation, but we do typically recommend for college-bound students 2 years of foreign language. We do typically recommend 1 credit of visual or performing arts, and lots of times I will also recommend some sort of computer, some kind of technology, half a credit or something like that. Because, in college it's gonna be, do a presentation on this. Use Canva, use PowerPoint, use Visio, something like that. And it's good if they're a little bit familiar with that stuff, right? So, but other than that, if your child's not going to college or they need some additional electives beyond that, where are their passions? Sometimes I'll have a parent like, oh, I'm so behind in electives. I'm like, tell me about your child. What are they doing? What do they do for fun? Are they picking a guitar, or are they, maybe they love social studies, so they're doing more than the 2 required credits. And so well, then those can count too. Because our final transcript does not say, yes, they took 4 social studies when they only had 2. We were only required 2. It's not going to say these were electives and these were social studies. It's just going to list the courses. It's not going to list what category it was in. So if they do courses beyond the minimum in the core categories, those can count towards this elective requirement too. But lots of fun things. And this is a good opportunity to let them, I don't want to say play, but let them try things that they've never tried. Yes, ma'am. What are study skills? It is, I taught that at college too. So what study skills is teaching them methods to study. So for example, I might teach outlining, like how to outline or how to take notes. I might teach different methods of reading for information. So like if you're reading in college, I think there's a method called SQ3R, like how you kind of do a summary first, you think of potential questions, then you read and recite and maybe say it again, repeat it, that type of stuff. So it's teaching them methods to help them learn. And it's a good course to take. There are some, traditional textbooks out there, that will help talk you through that. There's some great information on YouTube videos, et cetera, but lots of good stuff with study skills. I always loved teaching it because in college, I had students all the time, and I also did a section on it in my when I taught psychology, kind of how the brain works. They would come up to me, it's like, I wish I had known this years ago, because it is so much easier now that I know how to study in alignment with the way my brain works, okay? Let's see, half credits. Okay, we're getting a little. So the half-credit courses are health and wellness and personal finance. This is just a recommendation from me. You can do it any way you want. You know your kid. I always save those for the senior year because the last thing I want to say to my child before they leave out in the world is manage your money well, because I don't want to be bailing you out. And then number 2, don't forget to eat a salad. And make sure you live a healthy life. So I saved those 2 for the senior year because I think they meant more to the students at that time because, they were making money, they were thinking about their future, et cetera. And these can be curriculums, and we have a lot of recommendations for curriculums, but they can also be, like I know sometimes I'll have families who are living through medical issues in their family. And maybe they're at the hospitals a lot and they're doing this and they have special diets their children or they have to follow. It's like, you know what? Your life is health. Maybe dig more into those topics or if your child has to live with certain restrictions, find ways to learn more about that and help them to be able to take that forward in their life and be able to manage that for themselves. So those are the half-credit courses. And the real thing, I think one of the most important things that we want to do at HomeLife Academy is let the transcript tell the story. And again, as was mentioned in the earlier presentations, your child is not like anybody else's child. And I'm finding that more and more colleges like that, where they can kind of see the personality of a child come through when they look at this. So let the transcript tell the story of what your child has studied, who they are, where their passions are, and where their gifts are. And also, understand that there's going to be some fun along the way. Because if you think about it, high school for many of us is our last time with our child where we can still boss them around a little bit. But it's like it's our last time. So, don't forget, today's a beautiful day. Let's just do something else today. Let's go get ice cream and take a walk. And that's okay too, because it's also, there's some relationship in there, and you want to have that as well as the academics with your child before you send them off in the world. You want to give them a firm foundation of who they are and what is important to them as they go forward, and that it is in so many that it's okay. It's okay if we do things differently than other people. Any questions? I got like maybe a minute or 2 left. So I got 2 minutes left. Okay, any questions that anybody else has? Yes, ma'am. Okay, very good question. So we do have some it's fast track, early credits that you can get in 8th grade. We recommend no more than 3 in 8th grade. It could be like an Algebra 1, so Algebra 1 or higher can be early credit. It could be a high school level, it has to be a high school level science course, and then it could be a high school level social studies, but not U.S. history. U.S. history does need to be in the 9th through 12th year. So the idea with early credits is not that you're going to be done early and not do math in 12th grade. If you're doing early credits in math, it's probably because your child is going to pursue that further, and they're just, ahead. The other thing I just want to mention is kids change so much in those 4 years of high school, and their brain develops. Things that were hard were easy. Sometimes things that were easy get a little bit harder, and that's okay. That's just part of them growing up. I am around all day, so if you do want to talk further about some of this, please do come see me or any of the other counselors. You guys, this is an adventure. It is fun. It is fun to see your child blossom, and I thank you for your time today.